CrikeyCon wishes to advise that the following presentation contains strong language and discussions of rape and sexual assault. Viewer discretion is advised.
I'm Jess Dodson. You may have seen me on Twitter as Girl Germs. Last year in June, I put this tweet out and thought, we'll see what comes back. The stories were horrendous. The stories were just vile, and they weren't just tweets that I received. They were DMs, they were emails, I got text messages, I even had some phone calls for some people. So I will give a couple of trigger warnings. Number one, there will be profanity in this talk. If that is a problem for you, maybe leave now. The other one is there will be talk of sexual assault and rape. So if you're not in the right headspace to listen to that, you might want to leave now. So these were some of the stories that came out from women online about what they had experienced being a woman in IT. So just that top one, endless rape jokes, constant speculation about my sexuality, told no point in promoting me because I'd want to go and pop out some babies. And I can speak to that one. I was told when I came back from having my child, they were surprised that I actually came back. They thought I was just going to be a stay-at-home mum. Ignored, belittled and abused for ideas that men then offered as their own and were celebrated for. I'm pretty sure that there are some women in this audience who go, yeah, I've had that happen. All through high school, I was bullied by the boys in IT classes that asked for my help on assignments. In university, I was told not to worry about getting a job after graduation because I'd be a diversity hire, and if anything, men were envious of me for that. After the last talk regarding imposter syndrome, I guarantee you every woman in this room has at some point wondered if they were hired simply because they were a diversity hire. They've probably been told by their colleagues or their friends that they were hired simply because they were a woman. I know I've had that at least twice in the last 6 months. I had a coworker rub his genitals anytime I'd speak, and he would have a creepy smile. He would stop when I stopped talking. I told my boss, and he told me it was no big deal and to get over it. Can anyone raise their hand and say that's acceptable? No. I was asked to build a camgirl website because I'm a woman and supposedly wouldn't perv while building it. I refused, and the guy pasted my address and bank details he'd somehow acquired and told me he was coming to slit my throat. When I was in my first post-college IT job, I noticed that the days I wore a skirt were the days dudes had problems that required me to crawl under their desks. Now I know I've had that happen when I first started in IT. I worked at a university as part of their help desk, and the days that I wore a skirt were the days that the academics somehow needed all of their cabling redone. My first day on the job at my first job, I had to fight because they were going to turn the women's bathroom into a second men's bathroom. Now that gives you an idea of just how many women in IT there are. If there are so few women in your organisation that you're willing to give up their right to go to the toilet to give you guys more, not cool. I had a director 2 levels above me corner me and hit on me. When I told my boss, who was a woman, she said, "That's just Jack. He does that to everyone eventually." Guarantee he doesn't do it to the guys. I was straight up told after interviewing for an internal technical role I was qualified for, "Well, he's a good old boy. He doesn't hire women." A guy on my team sent an email with the subject line, "The ultimate women body piercing and this picture," and he sent it to their entire organisation. So all of these behaviours that these women detailed to me, all of the stories that I received, I was able to break them down. And these are the kind of behaviours that women are experiencing every single day in your industry. Now, you may not even notice it. You may not be the problem. You may not be the ones doing this. But I guarantee you, if you have women in your organisation, they have experienced this. They have been on the receiving end of it. They deal with it daily. And if you're not paying attention, you'll think it's all in their heads. You'll think they're complaining about nothing. You'll think they're whinging, and they're not. The stories that I've just shown you are all from women in infotech over the last 12 months. So, now that I've been really cranky with you all, how do we make it better? How do we fix it, and how do we stop it so that we get more women in? Because looking around the room, I can probably count on both my hands and not use all my fingers the number of women in this room. So, we need to start young. We need to educate our children that there's no such thing as a boy job and a girl job. There are just jobs. If you've got a young boy who wants to be a ballerina, go for it. Rock the tutu. I don't care. You'll be awesome at it. If you've got a girl who wants to be a truck driver or a scientist, that's not a problem. There are only jobs. There is no such thing as a male job or a female job, just jobs. The other one is you need to model the behaviour that you want your children to take on. So if you're saying things that are derogatory and sexist in front of your children, they will pick up on it. They will pay attention to it, and they will then emulate it. So don't do it. Women, help each other. There isn't room for only one of us. We are not unicorns. It's not this magical, there can be only one kind of Highlander situation. There can be more than one of us in an organisation or in a team. So don't tear down other women in order to increase your chance of getting a better position. That's not the way it works. We need to help each other. We need to support each other. You need to join women in IT networks. You don't even have to attend. Connect online, go on Twitter, Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, mailing lists, whatever works for you. Join up with other women and help them succeed, because we're only going to succeed if we all help each other. The other thing is, there is a link there. Have any of you seen the Pearl Pixar clip? It is adorable, it's amazing, and it speaks to this topic really, really well. It's about women pretending to be something they're not. You don't have to be the bitch, you don't have to be one of the guys in order to get ahead in an organisation. Unless that's what you want to be. If you want to be one of the guys and you're a tomboy, go for your life. But you don't have to be like that in order to get a job in this industry. You gotta respect each other. If you don't respect women, if you don't respect the women in your lives, then I don't know what you're doing at this talk. I don't know why you're here in general. If you don't respect the people that you are around, you are not a good human. That respect comes down to a lot of things. That comes down to the way you talk to them. That comes down to the way you talk about them. That comes down to the way that you interact with them. Don't belittle them, don't degrade them. Just generally be a nice person. It shouldn't be that hard. Understanding your privilege. Now, I realise it's a buzzword at the moment and everyone seems to catch on to the buzzwords, and I know that online, the minute that someone mentions privilege, there's all sorts of talk of SJWs and snowflakes and whatever. That's not what this is about. Your privilege is defined as a set of benefits you receive out of no fault of your own. It is your race, your gender, your age, things you can't control. I myself have the benefit of being a cisgender white woman. The first two, great. Last one, not so much. So a lot of you, cis, het, white men. That means that you've got a lot of privilege. So help those who don't have your privileges. Lift them up so that they can be on equal footing with you. Actively listen to us when we are telling you there is a problem. Now, I don't know how many of you follow me on Twitter, but I put out a tweet Friday night after the Women in Tech event for CrikeyCon. We had 2 guys come and try and crash our event. And in the end, pardon my French, we literally had to tell them to fuck off because they would not leave us alone. When we are telling you about these problems, the first thing you need to do is not go, that didn't happen, which is what happened online. The number of responses I got going, you're imagining it. They were probably just being friendly, as if they'd flirt with you, you're ugly. That's not cool. If we tell you there's a problem, pay attention. Chances are if a woman is telling you there is an issue, particularly at work, she's already weighed up the pros and cons of putting herself out there and putting a target on her back. Because the number of times that the women are the ones retaliated against when they raise these issues with HR, because we all know HR isn't there for the employees, it's there for the company. So the minute that we raise these issues, we're the ones that get quietly asked to leave through the back door. If a woman is trusting you enough to tell you there is a problem, pay attention. Give credit. The number of meetings that I've been in where a woman said something, no one's listened, and a guy said exactly the same thing, and everyone thinks it's a fabulous idea. I can speak to my own experience. I sat in a meeting with Microsoft and probably about 15 other people in my organisation, and we were told we had to get off of an operating system. And I put my hand in the air and said, I've been raising this for 2.5 years and nothing's been done. The head security guy of my organisation pointed across to the table at 2 of my colleagues who were both male and said, you should have got them to raise it. I'm not kidding. That actually happened and no one said a thing. That's not cool. Pay attention to who's having the ideas and give them credit. If there is a fabulous woman that you work with and she's got great ideas, amplify her voice. Let her have a say. Review your hiring practices. Now, when I'm sitting in an interview, I don't want to be sitting across from the table from 5 guys. There is nothing more uncomfortable for me as a woman to be sitting opposite a panel of all men. It feels awful. On the flip side of that, if I'm sitting across the table from you at an interview panel, don't automatically assume that I'm from HR and I'm a secretary. I guarantee you, your interview is going to end and your resume will get marked with a big fat no. I know because I had to do that when I went on maternity leave, and a guy I interviewed wouldn't refer any technical questions to me even though I was the one asking them. I would ask a technical question and he would answer all of his answers straight back at my manager, who had no technical understanding of what it was that I did. In regards to your hiring practices as well, try and make your hiring anonymous. When people are submitting their resumes, take out all identifying information. Where they've got their education, how old they are, whether they're male or female, remove names, because those kind of things can play to unconscious bias. Now you say, I'm not biased, I wouldn't do that. That's the whole point of it being unconscious. You don't even realise you're doing it. It doesn't just work for gender, works for ageism, works for racism, so that you're not seeing who it is. You're literally just seeing them for their skills, their merit, their abilities. The other one is when you're putting out position descriptions, be very wary of what you put as your desired and needed skills. HP did a study that showed that men will apply for a job if they only meet 60% of the required skills. Women will only apply for a job if they meet 100% of the skill set. So make sure you are only listing what you actually need to list. Cut it down. And women, don't be afraid. Put your name forward, put your hand up, go for the job. Worst that happens, they say no. Best that happens, you get the job and you get skilled up in that 40% of skills that you didn't have before. Visibility. You can't be what you can't see. I can tell you right now that in my immediate management chain on my floor, there isn't a single female manager out of over 100 employees on my floor. I am in operations and I can count the women in operations on one hand and not use all of my fingers. There is a reason there are so few women applying, because you can't be what you can't see. If you're not seeing you represented in these fields, you're not going to go for it, because as was just spoken about, you will feel like an imposter, an outsider in your own industry. Make sure that when you're looking at promotions that you are giving it to those people who may not necessarily put themselves forward. That doesn't just include women, that includes people of other minorities, that includes particularly racism. We see it so often that people just don't put forward the person who doesn't look like them. Be inclusive. When you're planning events and you've got non-drinkers in your team, maybe going out for a pub lunch isn't such a good idea. If you've got people with disabilities on your team, maybe doing team sports, it might not work for them if you've got a guy in a wheelchair. Think it through and make sure that whatever you're doing is inclusive for everyone. And that includes the perks for your jobs. So if you're advertising your roles and you're offering perks, make sure those perks are applicable to everyone you want to apply, not just a subset. Make sure that you're being inclusive with your language when you're at work. You may think you're being funny and the women around you may laugh, but I guarantee you they don't think your shit is funny. Sexist jokes are not amusing. We are not amused. Leading into that, we can call it out as much as we like. As women, we can go, hey, dude, you shouldn't be saying that. And we get told that we're the whingers and complainers and we're taking the fun out of everything. We need you guys to say this is a problem. We can't do it by ourselves. We are sick of doing it by ourselves. So if you hear someone making a comment that you think is wrong, don't just sit by. Don't just think, oh, it'll pass. Say something. Call it out. If you don't call it out, it'll keep going. The standard you walk past is the standard that you accept. Don't be a creep. Now, I wanted to use a different phrase because I tend to use a different phrase. My personal phrase is don't be a dick. Trying to find a meme for don't be a dick was really, really hard. So I went with don't be a creep. We don't want to be hit on at events. We don't want to be ogled because of the clothes we're wearing. We don't want to be told to crawl under desks because we're wearing a skirt. We are not magical unicorns, and you don't want to set yourself up for a sexual assault charge. Treat us as if you would treat anyone else. My favourite phrase comes from a comedian, Anne Clark, about men need to treat women the way they would treat Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. If you wouldn't say it to him, don't say it to us. Pretty simple. We just want to be like you. We love the industry we're in. We love doing the tech. We love talking tech. We like playing video games. We like doing all the same stuff you guys do. So don't treat us differently. Now, these are some of the links that I used to put together this talk. So feel free to take a screenshot, but if you don't get a screenshot, don't stress, because I have all of these links up on my blog, including an entire rundown of this talk, which is there. So the post on the bottom, the middle post there, 2011, that one is the post that has all of the details from this talk and expanded detail and all the links. So if you want to talk about it, argue with me, tell me I'm wrong, feel free. Do it in the comments, hit me up on Twitter. I'm open to any conversation about this. If we can at least get the conversation started, that's a good thing. So thank you all for coming and thank you for being awesome.
I can understand too. I was sitting in the front row and I could hear the next slide presses were pretty heavy on that one. So I'm wondering how many laptops you've been through.
It's been a rough 48 hours, I can say. Twitter can be a bit toxic.
Oh really? Oh, so. I haven't been paying much attention to that. Sounds like that's a good thing.
It's been fun, but yes.
I guess just before I throw it out to the audience, I just wanted to get an idea from you, because this is obviously something that you are paying very close attention to.
Yes.
If you have a sense that we are moving in one direction or the other, because it's impossible for me to tell.
We've been going backwards.
You think we're going backwards?
I do. And that's got a lot to do with the changing...
Sorry, can we just...
I'd say it's the changing of the guard. Part of the problem is that, and that's why I say we need to lead by example, a lot of the older people who held some of these views, they've passed those views on to the people who've then come into the industry. So I thought we'd be getting better and we'd have more acceptance, but I find that it's now the younger techs that are the worst. The young guys who are coming up through, they're the ones who hold some of these views and hold them really staunchly. And it's trying to break that cycle of passing it on to the next gen.
There is that whole global rise in, fuck your rules, it's okay to be sexist, it's okay to be racist.
That's exactly it. And we're finding that more and more, and we're finding that in a lot of spaces. So a lot of spaces that we would have considered as safe spaces, a lot of people, they're just leaving because they can't.
Yay, fascism.
One
thing it's interesting that you were speaking about, one thing that occurs to me is the visibility of this isn't necessarily that good to a lot of men, right? Which is why I think some men are like, oh, this can't be true because I haven't seen it.
And that's part of the problem. So unless you experience it, it's something that you wouldn't notice. So I guarantee you, any of you, ask the women you work with if they've experienced sexism in the last 12 months in their industry. I can't think of a single woman that I know who would say no, they haven't experienced anything.
I was just about to share a little anecdote there, which is my partner. She's Brazilian, right? She's brown. She has very curly hair, and she looks foreign, right? And we all hear that Australia is has a racism problem, and you think, oh yeah, but you don't see it, right? You're hanging out with your white friends, you don't see it. But walking down the street with her, I've heard people say that she should fuck off back to her own country because she's a piece of shit.
Yep.
That's nice, mate. Thank you.
Yeah.
You get the little old ladies. You can handle the little old ladies in country towns who are like, immigrants. That's whatever. But, there's big scary guys with the Southern Cross tattoos,
are a bit
mouthing off. And that's the thing. When I tell people this, and we live in Byron Bay. Byron Bay is like woke central in Australia. And if this is happening in Byron fucking Bay, I guarantee you it's happening in other places as well. And I sort of feel like the women's issues are a little bit the same way in that a lot of them, particularly the more low-grade stuff, is kind of opaque to most men.
Well, it's not so much that it's opaque, it's that it's because it's been happening for so long and no one said anything, it's just seen as okay.
Yeah.
It's just seen as it's par for the course, that's normal. And when you raise it online, you have a lot of people who will come and go, you knew what you were getting into. That doesn't make it okay.
Yeah.
Just because you know that that's what's happening, it doesn't mean that that's the way it has to be. We need to change it, or it's going to get worse. And
you say it is getting worse.
That it's getting worse.
Well,
and
fuck, this is cheery, isn't it? So who's got a question, or maybe just a nice joke or a good kitten gif or something? Does anyone have a question? We got one up the back there.
So if you I've left the previous employer where the sexism is so rampant in popular, I felt and white male, all that kind of stuff. Does it actually help when men go, not just helping and saying, yeah, this is uncalled for, all those things, but actually saying, no, fuck, you do this.
It makes a big difference, and particularly.
So the question was, just for those who didn't hear it, was we had a gentleman say that he left a job because the sexism in the organisation he worked for was so bad that he couldn't deal with it as a white dude, and he bounced out. And he was wondering if that is something that is effective.
It is helpful, but I think the more helpful part of that is the reviews that come out of that, things like Glassdoor and LinkedIn and your personal networks, to say don't work for them. They will treat you like crap. And keeping people out of there that will be impacted by that, and hopefully that will then mean that the people who are there will notice that there's a toxic culture and something will get done by management, whether that's management changes or management gets shifted out because they just can't hire talent.
It was interesting too what you said about the unconscious biases. There was a study done not so long ago where I think it was a group of university researchers, maybe Monash, I want to say, got a whole bunch of resumes and sent them in for job applications on Seek. They used Anglo names.
Jane Doe and John Doe, and then there was also...
No, they were the amazing disparity was when they used Arabic names versus And it was incredible. Like, you were like 50 times more likely to get a response with the same resume with an Anglo name on it versus an Arabic name.
Yeah, and
unbelievable.
The same thing works. They did the same thing for a John Doe and Jane Doe. Exactly the same thing. The men received something like 45% more responses to the resume than Jane Doe did.
Yeah.
So if you can anonymise it, it takes out those biases. You can actually see it for the merit. If any of you use the word meritocracy, wash your mouth out with soap. Meritocracy is bullshit. It doesn't exist because our unconscious biases are what plays to it.
But we got two things going on here, right? Because something that I'm more conscious of now, frankly, is my own unconscious biases, right? Because we all have them. And that's been a really, for me and for people that I know in the discussion among my friends, like, it's really about this whole Me Too thing and like the predators being unmasked in the industry. Like, that whole conversation has led us to sort of question our unconscious biases and maybe behaviours that we didn't quite mean. But, so that's our big self-reflecting thing. And then we come up here and we're like, oh yes, my colleagues are often joking about raping me. And that's... So it feels like there's these two tiers here. There's the really overt, horrible, shitty stuff, and then there's the sort of more low-key cultural stuff. Like, how do they
the problem
interact?
Is it flows up. So if you've got the low-key stuff, if you've got the stuff that is just the funny jokes and the odd sort of remark about a woman being a bitch, or someone only getting the position because they slept with a manager, those kind of things.
For me, that goes into the overt category, though. Like,
but that's considered normal. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I see all the time from women. They're saying, oh, this got said about me. That's not fun. But no one says anything. So it's because no one's saying anything when these kind of jokes and behaviours are done down the bottom, it then deems it acceptable. So it grows and grows and grows until you hit the sexual assault and the stalking. So I know when I'm attending a conference, so I recently attended a conference down in Sydney, I pick my accommodation based on how close it is to the venue and what the lighting is like on the way, in case I'm followed. How many of you guys have done that if you're a guy? A lot of the guys that I know as well, they feel like they shouldn't be being praised just for being genuinely nice people.
Yeah.
It
didn't make me feel good.
It's the standard for being a human. You shouldn't be getting praised, but the bar is sunk so low now that that's what's happening, and we need to raise that bar.
Yeah. Now, I think before we say goodbye to Jess and go to lunch, I think we should start a crowdfund a supply of keyboards. Because, as I say, there was like, next slide.
I will say, this is not my laptop. This is my husband's laptop that I borrowed.
It's nice bit of symmetry there.
And he's probably going to be very cranky that I've done that. No, I have a mechanical keyboard at home that when I smash it doesn't matter. It pops off and I can just put it back on.
That's
it's
right.
okay.
Okay, everybody, please thank Jess Dodson. That was great.